Michael Jordan will always be known as the man who globalized the sport of basketball, one of the most iconic figures in the history of sports, the greatest basketball player of all time, a legend among legends with his insanely gifted ability to play the game of basketball. MJ alone is how I fell in love with the game of basketball and became a diehard Bulls fan. But despite how great Jordan was at the game and being one of my favorite players of all time, Michael Jordan as an owner of a franchise is a different story, as he is quite literally running the Charlotte Hornets franchise into the ground, and that's what we'll be talking about in this video. If you're new to the channel and you enjoy the content, consider subscribing, as about 94% of you watching are not subscribed to the channel. Let's see if we can get the channel to 10,000 subs by the All-Star break, and just like we did at 5K, I'll be doing another giveaway for my subscribers once we reach 10,000. But anyway, let's get back into the topic. Now, as most of you know, after Jordan retired for the second time in 1998, capping off his career with a Game 6 winning shot over Brian Russell to win the Bulls their 6th title, Jordan actually returned to the game as president of basketball operations for the Washington Wizards in early 2000, and being in that front office role didn't last long, as he wasn't quite ready to walk away from playing the game of basketball and returned for 2 seasons to play with the Wizards before ultimately retiring for good in 2003. But in that front office role with the Wizards, Jordan used the #1 overall pick in the 2001 draft to select Kwame Brown, who ended up becoming one of the bigger draft busts in NBA history, especially for being selected #1 overall. Now, the reason I bring that up is because it's important to note Jordan's track record as an executive making basketball decisions. Now, after Jordan did retire from the Wizards in 2003, he subsequently lost his front office role that he thought he would return to, and in 2006, Jordan purchased a minority stake in the Charlotte Bobcats at that time, at which point he was given full control of the basketball side of operations for the franchise. It wasn't until 2010, though, that MJ actually purchased the majority ownership of the team from Robert Johnson and has been the majority owner ever since. Now, we should be clear on something, because this is the Charlotte Hornets we're talking about, one of the smallest markets in the NBA. They have 0 championships as a franchise since joining the league in 1989, only 10 playoff appearances in that entire span, and have never been to the conference finals in their franchise history. So it's not like this team has a strong track record even before Jordan started taking over. And on top of that, it's not a desirable free agency destination because of the market and their lack of success as an organization. So it's not like this is going to be an easy job to where you would expect success to happen overnight once Michael Jordan took over. But there is something to be said in how horribly this franchise has been managed under Michael Jordan. And I know some will say, well, he's the owner, he's not the one making the decisions for the team and how it's being run. That's the role of the GM. And while yes, that's true, there are certain owners among NBA teams that are much more heavily involved in the day-to-day basketball operations than others, and MJ is certainly one of them, just like Mark Cuban is with the Dallas Mavericks and the Buss family with the Los Angeles Lakers. In some instances, these guys are calling the shots more than the front offices. And since 2006, when Michael Jordan joined the Hornets ownership, the franchise has gone to the playoffs just 3 times since then. First round exits in all of them, 2 of which they were swept, and since Michael Jordan took over as the majority owner in 2010, they have had the worst winning percentage in the entire NBA in the last 12 years. Don't forget, in the Hornets' second year, when Jordan was at the helm, which they were still called the Bobcats at the time, the season in which the league faced the lockout and teams only played 66 games, the Bobcats went 7-59 in that shortened season, which is still the worst winning percentage by any team in NBA history. The Hornets have had 3 playoff wins since 2002. Playoff wins, not playoff series wins. 3 playoff wins in 2 decades. Like, at some point you have to take a step back and say, well, is the lack of success because they're a small market team that isn't a free agency destination, or is there something fundamentally wrong here for why this franchise has been so bad for so many years? It shouldn't matter how small of a market you're operating in. No team should ever be this bad when you've had 3 playoff wins over the course of 20 years. You would expect, even at some point, that you strike some sort of luck and hit on a star draft pick or make a trade that really pans out for you, not in the case for the Hornets, with the exception of drafting LaMelo Ball, which I'll get to. But let's take a look at the draft history of the Charlotte Hornets since Jordan joined the team as an owner and heading basketball operations, and we'll just look at the lottery picks, which they've had a lot over the years because they never make the playoffs. 2006, Jordan's first year as the minority owner but full control of basketball operations, the Bobcats drafted Adam Morrison with their 3rd overall pick. Morrison, another all-time greatest draft bust, never played more than 3 seasons in the NBA, had an okay rookie season, got injured, missed his whole sophomore year, and then basically forgot how to play basketball and was unplayable for the rest of his career. DJ Augustin, 9th overall in 2008. Augustin has been a decent player, but really a journeyman throughout his NBA career, played on 11 different teams, and didn't last in Charlotte beyond his rookie contract. They draft Gerald Henderson, 12th overall in 2009, another role player that didn't last long in the NBA. Kemba Walker, they drafted in 2011. Which was actually a solid pickup, especially considering most thought that Kemba wouldn't succeed in the NBA and would be one of those great college players that was just too small to be a star in the NBA and ended up becoming an all-star and an all-NBA player. But then they traded him to the Celtics in a sign-and-trade for Terry Rozier, which I guess now looking back wasn't that terrible because Kemba kind of fell off as a player after leaving the Hornets, and Rozier has actually been solid for them, but by no means is he an all-star level player like Kemba was when they traded him, and literally trading him the season he was selected as an all-NBA player, and all you could get in return was Terry Rozier. That pales in comparison to what teams are getting now for trading away their star players for multiple unprotected first-round picks. Then it really starts to get bad after 2011, which, mind you, Jordan is now the majority owner of that team. They have the number 2 pick in 2012, and they draft Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. This is the season in which they were so bad, finishing with that 7-59 record in the hopes to get Anthony Davis with that number 1 pick. They get unlucky, get the number 2 pick, and instead of drafting guys like Bradley Beal or Damian Lillard, they take Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who could never stay healthy and is already out of the league. Which you can't fault them too much because Kidd-Gilchrist was a top 3 recruit coming out of high school, but again, you could have had Damian Lillard or even Bradley Beal at a minimum. 2013, they take Cody Zeller 4th overall, a weak draft, but there still were better options than Zeller at number 4. 2014, 9th overall, they take Noah Vonleh, a player who they thought had a ton of upside potential, and then quickly realized, yeah, this guy isn't an NBA level player and probably never will be, so they trade him after his rookie season. 2015, they have the 9th pick. Again, they take Frank Kaminsky ahead of guys like Devin Booker, Miles Turner. 2017, they take Malik Monk 11th overall, but then don't re-sign him after his rookie deal, and now is actually playing decently well for the Kings. In 2018, though, this is possibly one of the worst moves the franchise could have made, and there's some more bad ones that I'll talk about as well, but most people might not remember this. The Hornets in 2018 actually drafted Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, but then traded that selection on draft night to the Clippers for Miles Bridges, who was selected the following pick, and also included 2 second-round picks in that trade. Now, of course, no one could have anticipated that they would have found themselves in the place where they're in right now, with Bridges being charged for domestic violence and then rescinding their qualifying offer to him because of that charge, and is now currently not playing in the NBA. It's not like Bridges was a trash player. No, he actually was one of their better players before that. But trading Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is arguably a top 15 player in the league so far this season and only 24 years old. But instead of all of that, you traded him so you could get Miles Bridges and a couple second-round picks. Yeah, you're talking about a franchise-altering decision when you could have had a franchise-level player in SGA. Then they drafted PJ Washington in 2019, right before Tyler Hero, and then, of course, they drafted LaMelo Ball in 2020, which this, again, is sort of the defining moment for this franchise and their ability to retain LaMelo Ball. This is the first time in the last 20-plus years in which the Hornets legitimately have a franchise player on their hands, a player that has the star power, fame, and notoriety that enables them to actually build their brand, generate revenue, fill the seats to really turn this franchise around and move away from their terrible track record. And look, I don't necessarily think that LaMelo Ball is that guy. Like, I don't consider LaMelo Ball to be a future superstar or a top 5 player in the league. I'm sure some people would disagree with that. I don't think he's a number 1 option on a championship level team. I think he's a very great player. He's certainly a star and still has upside potential because he's only 21. And I think because of his name and the hype surrounding his family's name, I actually think that's what makes him somewhat overrated. But I'm more so saying that's what the general population perceives of LaMelo Ball, that he's a player because of his notoriety can instantly make your franchise relevant, a player that is good enough and with the star power to actually be able to attract free agents to Charlotte and create a winning culture for that organization. But here's the problem. The Hornets have made horrible decisions in building this team around LaMelo Ball. Granted, Ball hasn't really been the embodiment of good health and has missed a good portion of this season as well as just his career, but the offseason that they drafted Ball, they signed Gordon Hayward to a 4-year, $120 million deal. An injury-prone Gordon Hayward at 30 years of age, now 32, who was already showing massive signs of decline in the Boston Celtics, to a 4-year, $120 million deal. And I get it, It's a small market, so you have to swing for the fences in signing bigger names to these big deals to get them to even want to come to Charlotte. Like Gordon Hayward wasn't getting that kind of money from any other team, so he's going to take that. You saw a similar thing happen with that big contract that they gave Nicholas Batum a few years back that no other team in their right minds would have given to him. But anyway, for Hayward, he's only played in 59% of the games available since joining the Hornets. They're paying him over $30 million to average less than 14 points per game on 42, 30, 76 shooting splits, and only playing in about half of the available games. But even aside from Gordon Hayward, this team does not fit well together and is horribly constructed. They have way too many guards, not enough big men. The guards that they do have all have similar skill sets, high volume shooting guards that don't play defense, that don't pass the ball well for being guards, and are inefficient shooters from outside. Not LaMelo Ball, I'm talking about guys like Terry Rozier, PJ Washington, Gordon Hayward, and Kelly Oubre, even though he's more of a wing. They drafted James Bouknight and Mark Williams in the last 2 drafts, and they haven't looked great thus far to give LaMelo any kind of confidence that this team has a bright future. And that's the point here with this organization. What is the direction of this franchise? What is their path forward to being a contending team? Since Michael Jordan has taken over as the team's owner, there has been absolutely no direction, strategy, or plan for the franchise and how they're going to do that. They're never building towards anything. They make these trades or free agency signings that make them good enough to where they aren't able to obtain high lottery picks. And when they do trade star players, they do it for pennies on the dollar and not obtaining the right draft capital to help build for the future. And even when they do have high lottery picks, they squander them away by drafting the likes of Michael Kidd-Gilchrist or Cody Zeller as top 5 selections. You look at their current roster, they've got a bunch of average players who are in their mid to late 20s, a young up-and-coming star in LaMelo Ball, 2 older players well past their primes, and a couple younger recently drafted players who don't really have a ton of upside potential. Like, what is their timeline even as it relates to building around LaMelo? Jordan hires Steve Clifford, a guy they fired not that long ago, and brought him back for whatever reason, because no one else wanted the job. They hired Mitch Kupchak to be the team's executive, a man who drove the Lakers into the ground in Kobe's final years, and as of right now, they're sitting with the worst record in the entire NBA, with the worst offensive rating in the league and 5th worst defensive rating. The worst 3-point shooting team in the league as well, despite being in the top half in 3-point shot attempts because of their inefficiency. Like, this is a horrible team, and if I'm LaMelo Ball, knowing my skills, what I bring to the table, being only 21 years old, being a big name, there's not a chance in hell I'm sticking around with this franchise even if they do offer me a rookie max extension. I'm going to take my chances on the open market as a restricted free agent and push my way out for a signing trade if you try to match whatever offer sheet that I get. LaMelo Ball wants to be in a big market. He wants to be on the biggest stage. That's how he promotes his brand, his value, gets endorsements, all of that stuff. Not play for the worst team in the NBA, being run by, I hate to say it because he's my favorite player of all time, but being run by the worst owner in the league. Which is saying a lot because I'm a Bulls fan and we all know how terrible Bulls ownership is with how cheap they are. I guess what the Hornets do have going for them though is they're now taking for Wembanyama, who actually is going to be a franchise-altering player that they would need to be an incredible talent to be paired alongside LaMelo. But even then, again, knowing the history of this team and how terrible they are at developing young players and constructing a roster with a direction for their future, we all know we don't want to see Wembanyama in a Hornets uniform. I'm sure I'm going to get a lot of heat for this video in the comments from Hornets fans, but let me know what you guys think. Be sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.